to the New World Order lives in the navies of the world.
And it's just curious. I'm a small boat sailor myself, so I have an affinity for all these people out there trucking about in ships on the water.
Oh, I do too. I really admire the Navy.
Yeah, and it's just curious to me that, of course, that it seems that we find within our data sets some justification for what you've just expressed. Not only that the navies of the world are somewhat more united than someone might give them credit for, and many of them see themselves as a part of a single body that we might call Oceania that has a few islands, North America and Europe in it, that kind of thing, right? But also
that's true.
Yeah, and many of them also see themselves as, if you will, a slightly different breed of critter than land-based minions. And so we've got a curious thing where the Russian Navy and their space group is more under the control of their Navy than their Air Force, unlike ours. And they're releasing more and more of their records through their Navy, but it also looks like they're using many of the technologies in some of their new devices. For instance, a number of years now, their cosmonauts have been given this device called the Skinar, which is a little healthcare device that provides analytic abilities, can kill pain, and so on, and now it has this new technology built into it called the Cosmotic, which affects humans at an energetic level. And it actually causes changes in the body through the introduction of small, very regulated and controlled certain kinds of electrical interaction, very much like a TENS device 2 or 3 generations removed. And so we're seeing within the Russians also a lot of really cool rumors that they're adapting what we might want to think of as contact-level technology into ordinary sorts of things. So, for instance, there's a big push in some of the Russian literature now that they're going to be potentially releasing sonic refrigerators. And this sonic refrigerator is nothing new. We have inventors all over the U.S. and elsewhere that are doing it. But their approach uses basically a small little engine that has no moving parts and can be run off of a couple of AA batteries for, from what I hear, days, 18 or 20 days. So imagine running your refrigerator for 18 or 20 days on a couple of AA batteries.
Well, sonic, that sound,
Correct.
How in the world can you run a refrigerator on sound?
Well, bear in mind that that basically refrigerators work now by, they don't really cool so much as they extract moisture from the air in an evaporative process. And so by extracting moisture, you extract latent heat, and that causes the air to be cool. And they use a compressor to compress fluids and expand fluids, and it's this compaction of a fluid into or gas into a fluid state, and the release of it that extracts the heat from the inside of the box. Now, the sonic refrigerators work in a different manner. Basically, what they do is that they broadcast out a sound wave of a very specific modulated frequency, and we're not talking, a single note. We're talking a very complex harmonic that actually causes the molecules of the air that are within the device's framework to become chilled in the sense of behaving as though they were cold. And since the molecules behave as though they were cold, they in essence manifest coldness.
That is just amazing.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. You won't believe the stuff they're doing.
Oh, God. One thing I want to say about the Russian Navy or about all the navies is the hierarchy of the Navy is the submarines are where like the super intel, where the CIA would live. They live in the submarines. And I believe, I have never been told this, but I believe the reason for this is the men in the submarine corps are the ones who have been given permission by the aliens who have bases at the bottom of the ocean to bring their submarines in to the alien bases.
May well be the case. We'd have no way of knowing, but I sure know that the Russian submarine force is state-of-the-art and is perhaps in many ways superior to our own and perhaps anything on the planet.
Well,
the rumors are from their own literature that they're making single pour solid titanium hulls that are absolutely pressure-proof at any pressure, and that they're doing this using a energetic technology that allows them to pour titanium at room temperature, and that they can do this in a manner that provides basically that the submarine's hull is one single titanium crystal. And
well, I can imagine that the Russians are mad as hell at whoever it was, and it had to be either Britain or the United States or the Mossad that took out the Kursk. Yeah. The Kursk was the largest submarine ever built. it was destroyed, I think, on its maiden voyage.
It was a strange situation there, and the Russians get a lot of grief, and they've from the rest of the planet that is undeserved.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, it's really curious to me that the most productive planetary food supply system in the planet in all of history was destroyed by the Bolshevik Revolution when it was not able to be purchased. Basically, that was what they were attempting to do. A small group of bankers were attempting to purchase vast quantities of the Russian agricultural system from the czars. That didn't work. And so we then have the Bolshevik Revolution, coincidentally, shortly thereafter. Just as we have Cheney trying to buy his way through Afghanistan with pipelines and so forth, and that didn't work. And then a few years later, we have the instance of 9/11 as a reason for him to go and bomb and take over Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So coincidentally, whether it's tied to it directly or not, is immaterial. But the largest production of food ever occurred was in the pre-Bolshevik Revolution, privatized Russian agricultural system of small villages. True, there was a lot of suffering under the czars and so forth, but nonetheless, in the latter years, under a slightly more liberal czarist introduction of the Duma, we have a system that was feeding the planet in wheat and could continue to do so today. So the Russians have a whole lot going for them, and in the thing that leapfrogged them over us was the period of time that they were under the enforced Cold War problems.
Absolutely.
And then it was said if you had to do it thinking and you could use a pencil, Russians were the best on the planet with it. And that's probably what gave them their start in the new technologies that they've got going now.
Yeah, I've often wondered if Vladimir Putin would give me political refugee status over there. I think there are a number of us that would like that. Many years ago, I was told by one of my friends, this is in '84, and she said, the United States and the Soviet Union are going to switch scripts. We're going to go underneath communism, and they're going to emerge as a free society.
And we're really close to that, especially if you start looking in the last few years in the controlled media. We've got 5 people that control our media here, and we've got the most, one of the largest, freest medias that has ever existed on this planet coming out of Russia.
I know. I read Pravda Ru and a couple of other of the Russian English newspapers before I read any American newspapers,
right.
Because that's the truth.
And I'm spending a lot of time brushing up and learning my Russian so I can read technical Russian.
Yes, let's see. До свидания. That's the only thing I know.
Здравствуйте, как вы поживаете?
I don't even know what we said.
I just said hello and how are you doing? Как дела? How are you feeling here?
Great. Hey, I've got an email from a listener who wants to know, how do you feel about change? Can this be changed? And could it be changed through prayer? Or could it be changed if enough of us joined in consciousness that we could make a difference to stop some of these horrendous predictions regarding the economy?
I don't know about the economy, because that's pretty much baked in the cake, and that's a long-standing cycle that's completing, and you have all these people. And also, let me point out that if you were to go to a prayer or a positive emotional stance, I believe that indeed is extremely powerful, perhaps far more powerful than we recognize. However, bear in mind that the people that are out there grubbing around for money in the economy and controlling the economy at that level are extremely corrupt, and so you'd have to have an equal mass. In order to turn it around, you'd have to have an equal mass of emotional energy that would be equal to the dark side, so to speak, or slightly greater. And that would necessarily change it all anyway. So the economy is going to go through a rough time, but in the end, if you survive through the next couple of years, you'll find that things economic are less of an issue for you in the future, especially as we get into this contact period. Because let me point out something here. As we get into the contact meme and we get the first set of free energy devices, that's one level of progression. The second level of progression comes when they take that same level of free energy and use it to produce a device that then, in essence, becomes the first replicator. And it'll work at a very crude level initially, but it'll finally get to the point where it'll be able to take whole devices of complexity and replicate them down by just taking a sweep of the template, as Tom Bearden calls the diaractic sea, or the continuous creation. Once we get to the second level, then basically you have a guy with a replicator who takes and builds 2 replicators, uses one replicator to replicate the other one, and we've got 3. And he just keeps doing that and handing them out. Every time he hands one out, somebody can replicate it again, and off